Welcome to another edition of In the Key Demos Wrasslin podcast. Sorry, and we are going to discuss how AEW will maintain. Well, first of all, how they will achieve 1 million views and maintain that consistently. I think the main issue that we both agreed on was the Booker. So clearly, he's inexperienced, and the fans always say give it time, but sometimes the Booker is just not cut out for it. Uh, One thing that they did miss out on was Sting. So as we know, when Sting came out, AEW got 1 million views. But what did they do? They had him come
Overexposure.
out, huh?
Overexposure.
That too, but there was supposed to be a hype, and literally all he did was just come out, which is fine. I mean, they probably should have had him hit Team Taz with a bat, and then on the next week, probably not have him promo very friendly with Shivani. That took away his whole mystique, and people just stopped caring. So that was just hands down the Booker. If they ever do bring in someone like a CM Punk, they gotta for sure make sure they don't do the same mistake. They will gain the viewers, but they have to make sure the booking is, actually good. Actually makes you want to tune in instead of tune out with the Sting example. Um, any response from with that?
No, I mean I think it's more the layout of the show. I mean, it doesn't seem to be very well put together to me. I mean, I don't know who helps them with that part out, but it just seems like it's just thrown together randomly, like last minute they put it together, and you could tell sometimes.
Yeah. What's there to say more about the booking? It's just things like heel versus heel. Like and in this example of tonight's AEW, you had the acclaimed versus the inner circle. That's okay. That's already heel versus heel. But how did this feud start? So last week at the Battle Royal, you had Inner Circle come out with their theme song, and the acclaimed interrupted their theme song. Okay, like just based off of that, they had a match the next week just because Jericho got mad. That was too rushed. Why not have in this week have the acclaimed go up against anybody else except you know Inner Circle, as the acclaimed come out and start to trash whoever in a freestyle rap. Have Chris Jericho come out and just start playing Judas or just interrupt them, saying that's revenge. So then the acclaimed will get upset, and then the feud will start to cook. But instead, they just went straight for the match. That's just rushed booking. Or if it's too rushed, it's too drawn out. The long term storytelling here, it's rarely good. The last one was probably Cody and MJF, and to some extent Hangman and Omega as a tag team. But aside from that, their long term booking has not been good. Uh, Anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, we knew where Sammy was basically going. Wesley saw tonight breaking up from the inner circle, but like you said, it just takes too long sometimes, or that's the problem. Either it takes too long or it's just rushed. I don't know. They just gotta find the perfect balance to it, to put it better.
Another thing that they constantly do is, which you had pointed out, is the constant pull aparts.
Yeah,
Uh, there's always that.
after
They,
every match.
they can't just have it end, and as well as having too many stipulations. So the problem with that is lumberjack matches, no DQ matches, all these matches, they stop being meaningful. They just become another match when you over expose them. They need to stop doing that for sure. So that way, when the stipulation is advertised, people will look forward to it. Like so far, we had seen a cage match, I think only once, right? With Wardlow and
And
Cody.
Cody.
That gets everybody hyped up. Why? Because you don't see cage matches in AEW. So when you hear no DQ, you're like, it's just like another no DQ match. So they got to stop doing that. That small little mistake, which goes back to the booking. They're hot shotting it. They're just constantly trying to always overdo things when sometimes you just gotta have a regular wrestling match. Um, Another thing that they constantly do is they overexpose the car crash style. Do you want to jump in that one?
I hate that car crash style. Not just because, well, I don't really like it, but it's also over. I mean, you want to keep your wrestlers safe at the same time, but yeah, I'm tired of all these. It feels like every main event is the same thing: car crash match after car crash match, and like you don't even want to stay tuned in for that because you're like, oh, it's the same thing again. It's basically like we watch Sting do the same thing every week. That's the same thing that happens in the main event. Just another typical match.
Yeah, and so the match is supposed to be a blow off to a feud. It's supposed to be, it's supposed to have it culminate in a meaningful way. So if you have just think of the picture. You have imagine you had Cody versus MJF. And their match, it was okay, but at least it had psychology. So you had MJF being the chicken shit heel, Cody just finally getting his hands on MJF. You're waiting for that moment. Now imagine if in that match instead both guys just start to go 100 miles per hour. They all start to do their finishers. Cody did like crossroads like 10 times on MJF. MJF did what's his finishing move again? I don't know, a
I don't
figure
even know. It's been so
four.
long.
I think it's figure. I don't know. What point? Oh yeah, it's some move. The point is, imagine them just no selling all the offense. So you had this feud that you're waiting for, and in the end, there's no comeback. There's no heat. There's nothing. Like you don't care for the match. It's just spots. So they need to restrict that as much as possible. I'm not saying take it away because obviously AEW is supposed to be diverse, but I mean you can't go wrong with traditional pro wrestling. Now some people say, "Oh, it's too much headlocks. It's just too slow." Well, a perfect example that everyone just saw was Dax versus Jungle Boy. You can't hate on that match. I think the only complaint I heard some fanboys say was that it's good, but not if the whole show is like that. So they do admit it is good, but of course they always got to defend the car crash style. So yeah, so they for sure gotta try and keep it traditional. And I have noticed an improvement in the show because as of recently, they've been going to pro wrestling. So aside from the main events, because those tend to always just be a car crash and just make no sense. Yeah, but for the most part, they are improving in that aspect. So it makes start gaining some WWE viewers, the 50 plus audience. So there's that. You had to mention women's wrestling, right?
Yeah, they need to build the women's division a lot better. Because I mean, it's something that's how would you describe something people want to see right now, right? Except for Jim Cornette, who doesn't like any kind of women's wrestling. And you could see that once that you can make stars out of them. I mean, look at Bianca Belair, Sasha Banks, Bailey. All people will probably know those names. Just your typical fan would know those names more than anything you got on AEW right now. And AEW should capitalize on that, on booking their women better and making stars out of them, because that could help put them over the top a little bit.
Yeah, and there's a controversy with the whole Tilla Blanchard thing, but you gotta hire her. You for sure gotta hire her. Like, yes, she may have heat in the, with the women, but you need to start having these women that need to know what they're doing. Thunder Rosa is probably the only one, but she's not contracted with AEW. She's with NWA. Aside from that, I mean, Britt Baker is probably their only, I guess you could say,
Yeah,
star, but she's getting there. Her promos are good. her in ring needs work, but she has improved. But aside from that, I mean, they need to work on that division very much. I don't know if it's all to blame, like on Omega's shoulders, but something there is it's definitely just management is just not cutting it out there. Um, let's see the personalities. So this is one thing that I feel that AEW needs. So you need over the top personalities or just a person who's just really charismatic, someone who has the it factor. So just imagine you got Stone Cold Steve Austin, you got Booker T in that convenience store match where if I remember correctly, I think Stone Cold hit Booker T with some milk, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, now who is AEW's equivalent of those two? John Moxley, Stone Cold. Now who could be Booker T?
They don't really have anybody that can be Booker T right now, do they? I don't think so.
I I don't know, but let's just say pretty Peter Avalon because he's a heel and he's
Oh,
supposed to be funny. Let's just say, right? Imagine that picture. Okay, let's just rewind 20 years ago, and if you had those two wrestlers, it wouldn't work. It because they're not entertaining. Mox is a good promo, but that's kind of where he stops. Uh, Peter Avalon is a heel and he is comedy, but he's still gonna pull this off. Like you need those personalities. Booker T is a personality. We all know that. Stone Cold is a big time personality. But the AEW roster, they lack that charisma, that it factor, that star power. I'm not sure what you can call it. So when you have these comedy segments, which at times they're definitely overdone, they need somebody to actually have that personality to put it over, to actually make it gold, like in the Attitude Era. And that's what people don't understand is that yes, AEW is like a old school Attitude Era promotion, but they don't have any charismatic people. The only ones were what? MJF and Chris Jericho, but then they kind of became comedy. But aside from that, who can you name who can carry those kind of segments?
nobody right now. I mean, uh, I thought, I mean, I don't like them right now working with New Japan. I mean, I get, what they're trying to do. Probably, I don't know if it's ratings or just fan service for their fans, but I think they should have waited on working with other promotions until they establish their own stars first because that's the problem right now. You can see in the ratings, it's not really helping them because they should have waited till these names that they had became bigger, and it would have been such a much bigger deal when they worked with New Japan or Impact. Because right now it's just a bunch of people we don't know.
Exactly. So that leads to point number three, which is better character work and more segments in the show. Now, this Dynamite, it had a pretty good amount of promos, interviews, segments, and that's fine. But I mean, how long did it take for Dynamite to start being like this? It took them quite a few months,
Yeah,
and even then, the pandemic happened and it kind of slowed things down. But even then, they're starting to go back to like the basics, where it's not just all in the in ring, it's backstage too. So one thing that I had noticed that can be improved is having the Road to Dynamite packages on the show. On YouTube, they have some great packages. So I had seen one of Lee Johnson, and as we know, aside from Dark, he hasn't been on Dynamite aside from being a MJF's lackey when he tried to beat Moxley in that presidential thing. But that aside, his package in Road to Dynamite, it was just basic. He's a baby face, and they could have added that in the show instead of having the main event. The main event alone had 10 minutes of entrances, something like that.
yeah,
So I heard some fans saying, "Oh, but there's no time on the show. Cut those entrances, or just
Make the matches shorter.
Yes, the Darby Allen Janela match went too long. They could have cut that. And you have plenty of time. All you need is 1 minute for a good interview. You could have added with those entrances alone in the main event. That's like what, 10 minutes. You could have added at least like 7 more promos, something just to further character development. So you add that Road to Dynamite package before the match with the Nightmare family against Cesar Bonani and Pretty Peter Avalon. You could have added that before the match, have the match, then the post-match promo. Right there, Lee Johnson becomes a sympathetic babyface, and you want to root for him, and that makes you invest in the character. That makes you want to tune in. That's the problem with Sting. We know who Sting is, but they didn't really explain anything on why he's there. It took him a while, and even then, it just if they would have booked it better and gave him a better reason to just come in, then that could have helped them keep the 1 million viewers they got, because they reached 1 million and they dropped the ball. So the character work needs improvement in AEW, and just more segments. Give us a reason to care. So I gave the example of the acclaimed versus Jericho. I mean, the acclaim versus the inner circle. So they didn't add any more segments, any more character work, and we got the feud just like that, just like FTR versus Jurassic Express. What? Because Marco Stunt was in the crowd, and just like that, a feud gets started next in like the following week. It's a match between Marco and Jungle Boy against FTR. So it's just too rushed. There needs to be more segments, more story time, storytelling, more character work, and then you have the blow off match. So yeah, there's that point. You got anything to add to that?
Just yeah, like you said, just tell us who these characters are because they don't. They expect us to know, like to tune into everything. And what's worse too is the fan base. Like if you're a casual fan and you're asking who these people are, the fan base jumps all over you. Like, oh, you're supposed to know, or I mean, if you don't understand, like, get out of here. Like,
Or go on Google, search it
yeah,
up.
yeah. So
That
that's
is, yeah. Um, so yeah, that's in my opinion the biggest 3 points is storytelling. If they go the route of entertainment, sports entertainment, that's fine. Just they need their stars to just really step it up, really be more charismatic, be more of a personality. And then just like some small points here and there, like don't overdo the comedy, because then the whole show it's not going to be taken serious. This isn't the Attitude Era where everything was comedy. Look at it this way: when you saw Stone Cold and The Rock leave, and they tried to do comedy in WWE, was it the same?
no, it wasn't.
You don't have any of these classic segments. I mean, the only time I could think of anybody being entertaining was Eddie Guerrero, rest in peace. But aside from that, nobody else could carry comedy. You need those over the top characters, those personalities. AEW does not have that. And some fans, like I said, some fans just care about the in-ring work, but even then, that's not even that good either way. So I mean, uh, any thoughts on that?
Uh, no, I mean, you hit all the points right there. So
Now, they need to balance the young talent and the old talent. So for the most part, they've kind of been relying on the vets, in the main event, which is fine. But then when they're overexposed, you get tired of them. So it makes sense to bring in new talent like a Jungle Boy, Hangman Page, that most lapsed fans or casual viewers, they don't know who these guys are. So I will say that not having a crowd definitely impacts that, because let's just imagine. you're a lifelong WWE fan. So you flip the channel, you see Dynamite, then you see Hangman Page, and as we know, the crowd loves him. I love him. He's a great babyface, right? So when the crowd starts chanting cowboy shit, the whole entire arena starts chanting cowboy shit. You think, okay, who's this guy? Why is he so over? He must be good. So the crowd not being there is, it definitely hinders things. Same thing with Orange Cassidy or even Broken Matt. So the crowd not being there impacts these young talents, because you're just wondering, okay, who's this young guy or who's this unknown? And AEW's problem, as we said, they don't tell us who they are. And if they do, they kind of half-ass it, and they don't go into full details, and just the commentators, Excalibur just says some random facts that, like I said, they expect us to kind of know these things, but the commentators for sure have to paint a paint a better picture for us too. But for sure, the crowds not being there is impacting everything, because who wants to see an empty arena basketball game, a football game, when there's no crowd there, right? The crowd gives that extra environment, that ambience, that excitement. So the crowd is, it's pretty big factor. I don't know when we'll get crowds, but wrestling for sure took a big hit on that one.
What I think they need to do is get their stars out there more, like Hangman with his drinking. Like, come on, get him a deal with Coors Light or Budweiser. Have him be a spokesperson. Like, get him out there, like, so these people know who they are.
That's a good point. So they're trying to do that with Cody, clearly with the Go Big show, and that's understandable. But I mean, Cody can only take you so far, because he's a good promo, but he's not a over the top personality like a Stone Cold. Hangman can be like that, kind of. I mean, I just think he for sure needs more time, and he needs to stop being this sad drunk. You know, like you said, they need to start showcasing these talents a lot better. I can't argue with that.
Yeah.
Uh,
Or get Dark Order a deal with Chili's, how we saw on BT, right?
exactly.
And how, yeah, yeah. Find a way to market them better.
Put Jungle Boy in The Bachelor. I believe he's single. There you go. I mean, there's plenty of ways. You got Sasha Banks in The Mandalorian. I had just saw that this past weekend. I was like, oh wow, I couldn't believe it. So yeah, you just gotta keep doing that. I think I heard John Cena was in some DC universe thing,
Yeah,
Marvel.
I
I don't
think
know.
the Suicide Squad movie coming up.
Yeah, it's just more exposure to talents.
Yeah,
Right now, what's just Cody. That's about it, right?
yeah, just Cody.
Then you got Jericho, but Jericho's not really a good spokesperson, because he's
Nah,
he's doing a lot of questionable decisions.
I mean Omega's your champ, but can you really use him out to?
You can't
I
use
don't
him
think so.
in advertising. He's no. So yeah, they gotta market themselves a lot better. Um, is that all we got?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah. So to recap, that I think the biggest thing is the personalities and the booker. And we're
Introduce
just
us to the wrestlers a lot better than how they've been doing. Guess that falls on the Booker, right?
uh to some
Or who?
extent it is a wrestler, because they need to learn how to get themselves over, and just they have to learn how this business works. They have to for sure promote their own brand. If they're not doing that, then I mean, that's not going to help the company at all. uh so yeah, for sure it's the booker, the personalities, the lack of personalities, and just better character work, and just have more promos, have us care. And this is going to sound kind of out there, but AEW has a bad impression, and they really need to either step it up, or in my opinion, do what WCW did, or they had planned to do. I don't remember if they did do it, but after that whole Vince Russo thing and the bad booking with Hogan, the plan was to just restart everything completely, new champions, just everything new.
But by then it was too late.
It was too late, but there's still time for AEW. They have their loyal fan base. They need to admit they don't know what the hell they're doing. Hire an experienced booker and just start over. And then, yeah, I mean, it might piss off some fans, but I mean, it might make the product better. It's, just get it back out there, because right now their first impression was horrible. They started off with 1.4 million viewers. Since then, the closer they got to was 1 point, maybe one, but that's because of Sting, and they dropped the ball there. So they don't know what they're doing. It's a lot of it of inexperience, hiring the wrong executive vice presidents. It's a lot of wrong, and they need to admit that they broke their promises with the whole sports-based thing and not
Please.
insulting our intelligence with the musical. Yeah, got any last words?
I mean, I don't know what you have against that musical. I mean, I say it was pretty good, but it doesn't belong in wrestling.
The music? The music? The what?
I said the musical was pretty good. I don't
Oh,
know
the
what you have
musical.
against.
Oh.
Well, actually, no, I was more of a fan of Jericho being dumped in the mimosa.
Yeah. So yeah,
Yeah, but
they gotta dig themselves out of this hole, because right now they're catering to one specific fan base, and they honestly think that this will get over, that this will attract new fans. It's not. You've seen it already with the NBA fans. They laughed at this product. Right now, aside from the fact that if you're an AEW fanboy, if you look all around to every single YouTube comment section that's not pro AEW, you'll see hate, not just dislike and criticism. You'll see hate. You don't see that hate towards MLW, towards Ring of Honor, towards NWA. You kind of see it with Impact. That's because that's a bad stench that they still have. But AEW right now is, they're looked as so amateur towards every other promotion. They really need to start over, in my opinion. But they won't. They won't. They'll change. They'll keep the same booker. They'll try to keep doing what they're doing, but they're never gonna get over 1 million. And that's just the stone cold truth.
well, all right. Well, I agree with most of it, but like you said, they've been turning it around lately, so we'll see if they can keep this up.
Yeah, at least they are doing some pro wrestling, and surprisingly, it was a decent episode tonight. Lots of promos, segments. Just they need to tighten up the screws.
Yeah.
And yeah, basically it. So I'm actually interested in AEW for once. I'm not too high on this Japanese tournament, but we will see what happens in the next coming weeks.
Yeah. I'm not high on it either. I mean, I don't even know who most of them are.
Exactly, because they're not introducing us to them.
Hmm.
So unless of course you're a Japanese princess fan or Joshi
Japanese schoolgirl.
princess. I don't know what they're called, but
I don't know.
that being said, that's our opinions. If you want to argue with us, go right ahead in the
Yeah.
comment
We're
section.
happy to argue with you.
Yes, more than happy. We're we're
After a few
not
of these, it doesn't bother us.
we're not AEW haters. We want the
Yeah, we want it to succeed.
yeah. It's just they need some work, and they're kind of learning, but they're kind of not. So we'll see what happens. But that being said, this is in the Key Demos Wrasslin podcast, and we will see you next week.